Hello friends, thanks for joining me in this video. I'm so happy to meet you after a long time. It's been a long time since I have recorded videos, and I thought of coming up with some good ventures of messages through these videos. In this video you will be learning about 11 forms of thinking. We face problems, challenges and a crisis at any given point of time. Nobody hits as hard as life hits us, am I right? So when we get hit by life and when we face the challenges and problems, we always think that there is a solution outside our world. But only few people come to know that the solution for all the problems will be inside us. So I thought of giving some information about the basic forms of thinking, 11 forms of thinking, for making you understand that any problem can be faced at a tip-top shape with the virtue of using these 11 forms of thinking. You face the problem in front of you and you ask yourselves a question that which kind of thinking am I going to use for facing this problem? Whatever the problem is, financial, emotional, family-oriented, career-oriented, business-oriented and whatnot. So we are going to get into this journey of knowing about these 11 forms of thinking, if you are ready to know about the 11 forms of thinking. Have you ever come across a situation where you were challenged out of your limits? Sometimes some of the problems in your life will be asking you to go beyond the limit of your thinking and beyond the limit of your efforts and even beyond the limit of your belief system. Human beings are always confined based upon the belief systems they have. And sometimes some people's belief systems themselves will be the clutch for their performance. So out of these 11 forms of thinking, the first form happens to be the most profound one. It's called as the big picture thinking. The big picture thinking elucidates to us that at any point of time, we need to think on a huge fashion. You have a challenge in your office. Let's say, for example, we figure out the example of a person who is working for a private organization. The person is clutched up with a big deadline. In the month of April 2017, by the end of the month, he has to finish the project. The person has got his own limitations. The team members have to cooperate properly. The resources have to come handy. And the time has to be very much on a congenial basis. So his performance in this project is tied up with various factors like this. At some point of time, the person might have some negative attributes in his mind, which are really pulling him down out of his performance. And that point of time, the person has to think about this big picture thinking. In this big picture thinking, the person gets into a very big visualization of thinking about the project on a huge basis, thinking about all the prosperities the project is going to offer for him, thinking about how beneficial he will feel after completing the project, thinking about what kind of job satisfaction and the fulfillment he will be having out of completing the project. And most importantly, my personal favorite, thinking about the things that he's going to learn by virtue of doing the project. So if he involves in this kind of thinking, this is called as the big picture thinking. So in big picture thinking, you will have certain salient features into the mind before involving in them. First and foremost, you will have to have the intention for expanding your world, because big picture thinking involves a lot of creative thinking and thinking on different perspectives. You have to expand your world, and you should be open for learning new insights from new forms of people, and you should be always thinking about how better you will be performing if you are going out of the box. So instead of facing the challenge with a broody mindset and being in a corner and crying, why don't you involve into big picture thinking? Out of the 11 techniques, this is the first one. And after finishing discussing about each thinking, I will be offering you a thinking question. And that thinking question is the kind of weapon, the lethal weapon that you are using against the problem that you are facing. So after each thinking, keep your mind open for receiving this thinking question. Now, I would like to trigger out the thinking question for big picture thinking. The thinking question goes like this. You can see here. Am I thinking beyond myself and my world in order to gain a new perspective towards this problem or the challenge? So this is a thinking question for big thinking, big picture thinking. So basically, if you are asking this question, your mind will be giving you an alarming answer. Sometimes your mind will come up with the answer, no, you are not thinking. You are thinking only confining basis. So at that point of time, you have got a serious challenge to face. So I want you to use this big picture thinking by asking this question. Apart from positive thinking and possibility thinking, we haven't heard much buzzwords. We just saw about big picture thinking, and now I would like to drive your focus towards the second thinking, which is focused thinking. As the name goes, focused thinking is a very important tool that you can use for facing your challenges and problems. When you are caught up on a rut, you have a very big problem in terms of not being able to focus on what the problem is. Let me give you an example of your family problems. Sometimes when you are having family problems, what happens is all the family members sit in one particular center and you all discuss about the same problem. At that point of time, focused thinking automatically sets in because you're all talking about the same problem. Your uncle speaks about that, your father speaks about that, your brother speaks about that. You try to get as a part of the discussion and you try to give your contribution of the points in that. So focused thinking is automatically there. But when you are having your individual problem, personally and professionally, this focused thinking does not come to you on a handy basis. So you got to be very much careful in terms of what knowledge you will have to get into it. Because the thinking question for focused thinking is, am I able to control all the distractions and clutter and narrow down my focus only towards the challenge I'm facing? This is the thinking question for focused thinking. If the answer is yes for this question, then you are good in focused thinking. But if the answer is no, I'm frequently caught up with distractions, I'm frequently caught up with clutter, I'm deviant in nature. If the answer is no, and if you have got these emotional problems, then we've got a very serious challenge in hand. But I believe in you very strongly that you definitely have the power of focused thinking. One among the famous psychologists, William Blake, mentions that knowledge is power only if a man knows what factors not to be bothered about. There are two factors that are to be bothered about, which are not to be bothered about towards a particular problem. If you are distracted towards the factors that are not to be bothered about, then focused thinking is miles and miles away from you. So you got to be very careful in terms of thinking, and you need to streamline some sources for avoiding the distractions. If you've got a problem, always have the habit of taking your journal and pen down the scope of solutions for the problem and write down all the possibilities of solving the problem. And by virtue of writing, focused thinking automatically comes into you and you find it so comfortable, and you will be coming to a proper conclusion. So focused thinking, my dear friends, is all about avoiding the distraction and avoiding the clutter and thinking only about the problem, and finally nailing the problem and coming out of it successfully. The third thinking is called as the creative thinking. We saw big picture thinking, thinking big, focused thinking, concentrating without mental clutter. And the third one is creative thinking as a tool for facing your challenges and problems. Are you really an out-of-the-box thinker? Answer this question. Think about your childhood, think about your adolescenthood, and think about your adulthood. Are there areas where you felt that you are an out-of-the-box thinker? Thinking on different ways than the other people? Thinking on the road not taken principle? How do you actually think? So just have a thinking. Because creative thinking, the recent scientific studies reveal that every man has got his or her own creative thinking paradigm. So are you really using creative thinking for solving your problems and creating an edge out of the challenges that you are facing? The thinking question for creative thinking is, am I thinking out of the box, having my challenge up front? Out of the box, this particular term has got plenty of meaning. Thinking on a humorous basis, thinking on a different basis, thinking on scientific basis, thinking on a holistic basis, plenty of things. I mean, creative thinking in itself, when I was learning my management education, I was learning a separate chapter for creative thinking. So when it comes to creative thinking, we are in terms of using this right-sided brain, and we have to use our visualization and creative synthetic imagination. There are two different kinds of imagination: creative imagination and synthetic imagination. Creative thinkers always use these two. All the evolutions that we are seeing now around us are the results of creative thinking. So who knows, sometimes creative thinking will come handy for solving your problem. Do you get the idea, my dear friends? It's been quite since we have started this video discussion. These three thinking will have to be the primary resource for you to slay away the problem and challenge that you're facing. I'm having a challenge in front of me. Let's say, for example, I came across a candidate who opted for counseling. I mean, the person did not have any clue how to progress in the business. He was an entrepreneur and he did not know, he did not have any idea of how to progress on his business. So having learned these three thinking, you tell me, if you were an advisor for that businessman who says that there is an idea scarcity, which thinking you will be suggesting as a tool for that businessman? Is it focused thinking? Is it big picture thinking? Or is it creative thinking? Or maybe after the end of the session, by looking into all the 11 thinking, you might be giving me an answer. But right now, out of these three, which are all the things that are going to be very much handy for that businessman who opted for counseling? You're right, all the three. The person has to involve into big picture thinking, focused thinking, and creative thinking. So likewise, open your mind floodgate and think. Sometimes the creative thinking will give you a helping hand to pull you out of the problem. And that brings me to the fourth one, the realistic thinking. Practical thinking, no hocus pocus, no much frantic and fantasizing story. If you got a problem, think on the realistic basis. Analyze the pros and cons of all the options. Imagine the worst scenario of the problem. Talk to the people and get the facts. And try to be aligned towards the truth. Embrace the truth. That's all about realistic thinking. Realistic thinking pushes you into the kingdom of truth. It does not play with you. It does not give you any sort of cinematic, adventurous thinking, funny thinking, cliche thinking. No, realistic thinking is about real facts, the truth, and getting into the practicality. Sometimes we will have to list down all the facts that we have and all the realistic scenarios that we have. So therefore, the thinking question for realistic thinking is, am I really thinking on a practical basis, avoiding all the consequences which are imaginary? So basically, realistic thinking is encouraging you to be straightforward, okay? And there is no, again, I'm saying, I mean, there's no backward thinking. It's all about practical thinking. If you've got a problem, face it. Okay, if I'm becoming bankrupt, what am I going to do? Do I have secondary sources of finance? What will I do if I'm not able to complete the project within the deadline? At the worst case, if something of that sort happens, what should I do? I basically feel, while I'm saying this is going to be a very advantageous thinking rather than any other thinking. This is going to be really advantageous because you are embracing the truth and you are pushing yourself into the reality. So realistic thinking is very, very dynamic and it doesn't play with you around. So think about it. Next in place is strategic thinking. Very popular buzzword. When it comes to corporate decision making, it is always strategic decision making that is going to be the first option for all the corporate people. Ask the question why before you ask the question how. Why is it so important? If I got this particular challenge and I am using this solution, why am I supposed to use this solution particularly? Strategic thinking makes you think about the avenues. It makes you think about searching for people, exploring of new ideas, exploring of new thoughts, exploring of new beliefs, setting up new patterns of behaviors, and setting up new actions. So strategic thinking is all about networking, right? So you put the right people at the right place, put the right resources at the right time, and you don't even seem as if you are struggling with a problem. You look like a war-footing general giving lots of instructions to your army and battlefield. So strategic thinking is very, very lethal and powerful. Tell me a problem that you faced and in which you talked to many people about the problem and you gathered all the facts. Somehow you churned out of the facts and came up with the course of action. You implemented into the course of action and you finished the problem. You come out of the problem. Can you remember such a situation in your life where you did all these things? Then without knowing, you have been using strategic thinking. Because that's what is strategic thinking. You never settle. You try to keep your options open and you have got the eye of the tiger towards all the resources, the people, and every single thing that comes in front of you, you try to put that for the use of solving your problem and the challenge. Strategic thinking. So the thinking question for strategic thinking is, am I gathering all the resources and all the people segment for solving my problem? Even better, the thinking question goes like this. Am I having the collection of all the resources, all the factors for implementing towards my problem and becoming better tomorrow? This is going to be the thinking question for strategic thinking. So think about this. Strategic thinking is going to make you as a leader. If other thinking patterns are really going to escape you out of the problems, strategic thinking is the only one which is going to make you as a leader. The next one is my favorite. It's called as the possibility thinking. Possibility thinking has to have one quality. It gives you one quality wherein you don't listen to the other people's expert advice. The first and foremost factor in possibility thinking is keep yourself away from the experts. Because experts always say the conventional areas of the impossibilities and the imperfections of the situations. And if you try to think on a creative basis, they will come with the fault-finding attitude and you will be discouraged. So when you have got a problem, facing a challenge, possibility thinking, if you are utilizing possibility thinking, here is how you are supposed to go about. Point number one, as I mentioned, stay away from the experts. Point number two, dream big. Think of all the even tiny possible kinds of avenues that you can utilize for facing the problem and solving the problem. Read a lot of books, get into the internet and browse through a lot of articles, get some inspirational people's failure learning mechanism, get into this foundation of how a person has come across devastating life scenarios and situations. By virtue of putting yourself into this, you will get into the wonderful level of solving the problem. And this entire pursuit is called as possibility thinking. And in no circumstance you think about the impossibilities of the problem. That's called as possibility thinking. So the thinking question goes like this. Am I really exploring all the possibilities of solving the problem? Or am I really settling down at one particular section stating that it is impossible? So this is a thinking question. So be a possibility thinker and try to face the situation. And at any given point of situation, don't just get into the conventional by book technique of not being able to by book technique of the impossibilities. Say no to impossibilities. And this one is called as the reflective thinking. Sometimes the best library is your past. For some of the problems that you're encountering in the current situation, your past behaviors will definitely come handy for solving the problems. Go back to your past, do some retrospection, and try to reflect on the past scenarios and try to ask yourself various questions. How did I manage to come through when I faced the same situations 5 years back? How did I approach this situation when I was a little bit more in? How did I approach the situation when I was having no kind of resources? So reflective thinking makes you understand that your past has got a lot of glory. So you try to introspect, you try to refer the diaries if you have of the past, You try to talk to your parents as to how you managed to pull across some problems. You try to talk to your brothers, you try to talk to the then best friends who would be having a better view or a better shade of memories about you as how strong you were. So this is called as reflective thinking, not going anywhere else, but introspecting inside of yourself and trying to come up with the solution. So reflective thinking offers you a thinking question, and that question goes like this: am I really going back to the past and gathering strength towards the current situation? So this is the question for reflective thinking. The next one is popular thinking. There are some streamlined gospel avenues of thinking. This has to be like this, this has to be like this, that has to be like that. Likewise, conventional popular thinking. Popular thinking is go against the popular thinking. Break the fence and walls of popular thinking. Try to ask revolutionary questions against the popular thinking. Please try to understand that I am not asking you to involve into popular thinking. I am asking you to go against popular thinking. If someone says that doing business at the age of 25 is not going to be an advisable one, question that popular thinking. If someone says obtaining loans from the bank with the current demonetization process that is on the wings, it's definitely going to be very difficult. Question that popular thinking. If someone says the government does not offer proper levels of fringe benefits for the privatized organizations, question that popular thinking. Medical courses, engineering courses are past, they are history. Now we need to think on a little bit of a conventional way. But if you are interested in engineering, question that popular thinking. So questioning the popular thinking and try to be more rebellious and revolutionary in nature. Okay, so the next thinking is called as questioning the popular thinking. So the thinking question goes like this: am I really falling slave to the popular thinking, or am I thinking in a new dimension? So don't dwell yourself into popular thinking. The next one is involve into shared thinking. Having the mastermind alliance. With regard to the problem and challenges that you face, having a shared thinking, talking to the people, getting the ideas from the other people, gathering lots of new directions from the other people, going to places, meeting people, exploring a lot of network, revamping the old classical network which had not been alive for a long time, regrouping with the people, getting into the same page of the other person. It's called a shared thinking. So the thinking question for shared thinking goes like this: am I really thinking beyond my head's dimensions and going to the others for solutions? So sometimes some nature of problems will be elucidating shared thinking as the best one. Instead of, there are places, my dear friends, where even big picture thinking will be overtaken by this shared thinking. Because sometimes you need some people, sometimes you need some different heads together which would be thinking, and Delphi technique has to be done. You know what is Delphi technique? All of the people thinking together on one particular problem and triggering out the ideas and finding out the best ideas amongst them. That's called as Delphi technique. So shared thinking is all about the Delphi technique. It's a corporate jargon, by the way. So basically, shared thinking gives you new dimensions that you might not have thought. Okay, so one big challenge in shared thinking is most of the people don't use this shared thinking because of the ego factor. They don't want their ego to be tarnished. I mean, they have the ego of not being able to, going to the others and ask, could you please lend me some help? So shared thinking shatters your ego and gives you best solutions. So now we come all the way down to the wire, towards the final two levels of thinking. The second last thinking is called as the unselfish thinking. Sometimes for facing the problems and your challenges, you will have to be completely selfless. If I get rid of this problem, I will earn this. If I get rid of this particular challenge, I will get benefited out of this. Sometimes God offers you some problems in which you are not supposed to think on a very selfish basis. You're supposed to think on a little bit of an out of the box, and you have to see what others will gain because of your wisdom. So that's called as the unselfish thinking. In fact, it's my personal favorite. Most of my life, I have been using this unselfish thinking for getting the happiness for myself, eternal happiness for myself and the people who are connected with the problem. In corporate life, so many industries are using this unselfish thinking, and sometimes some big corporates come up with corporate social responsibility. Reliance Communication comes up with corporate social responsibility, and currently Reliance Industries by Mukesh Ambani has come up with this wonderful example of the telecommunication network being so much easy by virtue of Geo. In one way, many case studies mention that invention of Geo and bringing Geo into the market is a very big example of unselfish thinking. I cannot cite that as an example. So unselfish thinking really puts you in a proper platform where you are more altruistic in nature. You know about altruism. So unselfish thinking offers you this thinking question that you are seeing on the slide now. Am I really thinking based upon the others' welfare and others' benefit, keeping me at the backyard? So this is the question for unselfish thinking. I watch on the point that this is going to be very difficult for you, but it is not impossible. So try to do that. We're coming down to the final thinking, which is called as the bottom line thinking. So bottom line thinking sometimes offers you plenty of sessions as to how to solve a problem in terms of thinking about the conclusion of it. Ultimately, this is what is going to be my solution. This is what is going to be my obtained result. This is the result I want to achieve. So for that, I would like to take this strategy. So keeping the result on the upfront of your mind and taking the effort is called as bottom line thinking. Therefore, bottom line thinking's question goes like this. This is a thinking question for bottom line thinking. Am I keeping the results and outcome alone in my mind for solving the problem? So any person who tries to solve the problem, keeping the returns and outcome only into the mind, that person is adopting nothing but bottom line thinking. So you might find that bottom line thinking handy as well. Again, that is entirely depending upon the problem that you are going to face. So bottom line thinking is a very powerful one. It requires a lot of emotional maturity and good form of thinking. Right from big picture thinking, my dear friends, till this bottom line thinking, all these 11 forms of thinking offers you one very stupendous message. And that message is, at any given point of time in your life, both on a personal basis and professional basis, you have to be a voracious thinker. You have to be a voracious planner. Sitting in a corner and crying is never an option. Put your brain and put it into the piece of paper, get all the explored thinking and put all the possibilities and trying to get the outcome out of it. Maybe today when you are listening or watching this video, you are a student. But in the future, you might be a leader. You might be a top class MNC employee. You might be a very big businessman or businesswoman. You might be a very big steel merchant. You might be a very big entrepreneur. So at that point of time, there are people who are going to be connected along with you. And those people are always looking for solutions out of you. And if you'd like to offer solutions to the others, then you have to use these 11 forms of thinking. Once again, I would like to put all the 11 forms of thinking for your purview and take a good look at it and try to use them. Having listened to all the 11 forms of thinking, now let us take a quick stock of what all the things that we have discussed. Understand, before I give you the gist of those 11 thinking, at any given point of time, you have got a very big responsibility of keeping the problem in front of you and see which form of thinking is going to be useful for eradicating the problem or facing the challenge. So the first thinking that we discussed was seeing the wisdom of big picture thinking. Unleashing the potential of focused thinking, discovering the joy of creative thinking, recognizing the importance of realistic thinking, releasing the power of strategic thinking, feeling the energy of possibility thinking, embracing the lessons of reflective thinking from the past, questioning the acceptance of conventional popular thinking, encouraging the participation of shared thinking, experiencing the satisfaction of unselfish thinking, and enjoying the returns of bottom line thinking. So starting from the big picture thinking till bottom line thinking, you have to be very careful. Understand the real nature of every thinking patterns before you put that into application, because that's your stupendous responsibility. Don't just sit in a corner and cry when you have got a problem or a challenge. When you've got a problem or a challenge, make yourself understand that God gives strongest storms to only His own strongest sons and daughters. So when you've got a very big problem, thank God and start putting these thinking into application and try to get out of the rut of the problems and challenges, because they are always going to come. Troubles, problems, challenges are always on the way. They will keep coming into your life, and every single time when they keep coming, invite them as guests and try to use these. Sometimes multiple number of thinking will be really coming handy. For example, strategic thinking, big picture thinking, bottom line thinking, and creative thinking. All these four will come on a proper combined basis, which are going to be completely useful for that problem. I again say the microscopic view of the problem is completely in your choice. How you view the problem is really going to determine the result of it. So I'm really so much delighted that I have given you a wonderful resource for thinking about. Use these 11 forms of thinking, and don't you ever fail to share the success story of yours with me. So until we meet in the next form of a video, thank you so much. Live strong and live with passion.